Fake cops from the HOA showed up to tow Grandpa's truck, a 78-year-old Marine Corps veteran. He silently stepped outside, assumed a sniper stance, and that alone was enough to freeze everyone in place. What they didn't know was that he had already sent the footage to the district attorney. But what happened next completely shattered their entire scheme. Let's start from the beginning. It was a quiet, lazy Sunday morning. One of those weekends when the sun hits the grass at the perfect angle, birds chirp over the rooftop, and it feels like there's not a single reason in the world to hurry. I'd come to visit Grandpa a bit early, as usual, with 2 cups of 7-Eleven coffee and a box of worms we were planning to toss into the waters of Lake Tenkiller. Grandpa, James McCowan, 78 years old. Retired Marine, Desert Storm veteran, old school to the bone. Stubborn, calm, carved out of oak. He lived alone on the edge of the Bartlesville suburbs in Oklahoma, in a small house with an American flag he took down during every strong wind and put back up with care. His old Ford F-250 sat under the same tree by the curb where it had been for the past 20 years. The same truck he lovingly called Iron Jackson. Reliable, solid, just like his principles. We'd planned to head out at dawn, but I was running a little late. When I got to the house, he was already on the porch with a cup of coffee in hand. He nodded at me and motioned with his eyes to the left. I turned and froze. Standing by the curb, right next to Iron Jackson, were 2 people. A square-jawed man with a near-military haircut. A thin woman in glasses, a tablet hanging from a lanyard on her chest. Both wore matching black shirts with white block letters that read HOA Security Enforcement. No badges, no stars, no credentials. Just plastic cards on chains and cold determination in their eyes. They were placing a boot on the front wheel of the truck. I rushed forward, unable to believe what I was seeing. "Hey, what the hell do you think you're doing?" The woman slowly lifted her head, as if already tired of scenes like this. "HOA violation," she stated flatly, never lifting her finger from the tablet. "No heavy-duty vehicles may be parked on the street during weekends. This is a first warning. Fine. $600. I blinked in confusion. 600? For what? For the truck that had been parked there since before I could remember? The one local kids used to draw with chalk? The same truck Grandpa used to haul sand for a neighbor's lawn or groceries for the widow down the block? The man stepped closer. His boots crunched on the gravel as he added, "If the fine is not paid within 24 hours, the vehicle will be towed at the owner's expense." He didn't even look me in the eye. I glanced back at the porch. Grandpa was standing there, still as stone, a coffee cup in his right hand. His left, empty, fingers clenched into a fist. I recognized that stance. I'd seen it in old photos from his military album. And for the first time ever, I noticed his hand tremble. He wasn't confused. He was angry. In our neighborhood, the HOA had long since stopped being anything like a Homeowners Association. It had become something else entirely, a suburban mafia in all but name. It started with little things, forbidden curtains, hedges that were too tall, the wrong color of the gate. Then came the threatening letters, then the fines, and finally, peace officers with no badges, no licenses, and no accountability. And behind this whole circus was one ringleader, Brett Westbrook, a failed realtor who, after flopping in the housing market, decided to build his empire out of fear and paperwork. He gave himself the title of HOA chairman, wrote his own rulebook, and rubber-stamped his own authority. He wore a skinny tie, lived in a house with columns, and had the gaze of a man who dreamed of being a dictator, but was too afraid of real politics. So he built himself a kingdom among suburban fences. He didn't manage. He punished. A year ago, he launched a new campaign. He called it the Neighborhood Aesthetic Enhancement Program. In reality, it was a purge, targeting work trucks and older vehicles. Anything that didn't fit his suburban brochure vision was instantly deemed a threat to community beauty. Farmers' pickups, electricians' trailers, off-roaders owned by retired firefighters, and of course, Grandpa's Ford, all got caught in the sweep. That's when he introduced a new term, visually aggressive vehicle. Made it up himself, started issuing fines for it. And no one stopped him. Residents tried to push back. They wrote letters to the city, started petitions. But when the topic of the HOA came up, officials would just shrug. It's a private organization. We don't intervene. Meanwhile, the street started filling with more and more people in black shirts labeled HOA security enforcement. No licenses, no credentials, just tablets, plastic badges, and the confidence that nothing would happen to them. They scanned vehicles, photographed windows, documented violations in people's bushes. And once you got one of their notices, forget about having rights. We even had a running joke. Don't pay your taxes. The IRS will wait. Don't mow your lawn. The HOA will destroy you. And now, they came for Grandpa, for James McCowan, a man who'd marched through the Kuwaiti desert, built bridges under enemy fire, and raised the American flag on his porch every single morning. They came for him thinking he was just another old man with a truck. Thought he'd stay quiet, pay up, and roll his pickup out of sight. That's where they made their first mistake, a big one, because their biggest mistake wasn't touching his truck. It was thinking he was just an old man. The next morning, Grandpa woke up at 5 o'clock a.m. No alarm, no words. He simply got up, like he was back in the barracks, the way you wake up in a combat zone, half asleep, already alert. I heard his footsteps on the creaky floorboards, heavy, precise, unrushed. He put on his old denim shirt, frayed at the elbows, seams faded with time. Over it, a vest. Then his army boots, high-laced, worn but polished. Every movement was a ritual. Then he opened the closet and pulled out a black military case. I'd seen that case my whole life. It had never been opened. I used to think it was empty, just a keepsake. But that day, I heard it snap open with a metallic click. Inside, not weapons, not uniforms, not medals, cameras, carefully packed like combat gear, an old flash drive, and a yellow folder with a handwritten label. They forgot who they were dealing with. He walked outside like he was going for his usual morning stroll, but every step was measured, calm, and that made it all the more intimidating. He set up the first camera under Iron Jackson's fender, the second in the branches of the old maple across the street, the third inside the mailbox, where he had removed the decorative lid. All done quickly, cleanly, with no wasted motion, like he'd done it 100 times before. By 10 a.m., the asphalt began to hum under the growl of a tow truck. Right on schedule. They had arrived. The same two in black. Same plastic badges. Same blank expressions hiding their smug sense of impunity. "Remove the vehicle," the man ordered, speaking to the workers this time, not even looking our way. Confident, as if the matter had already been settled. They had their chance. That's when Grandpa took his first step forward. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He just spoke, with a voice that didn't tremble from anger, but from discipline. "I'm James McCowan, served in the 1st Reconnaissance Battalion, U.S. Marine Corps, Desert Storm, Bravo Sector, Northern Border, 17 years active duty, 15 in reserve, and right now, you're violating federal law." Silence. Even the wind held its breath. The man turned, slightly thrown off. "Step away from the street, sir," he muttered, but there was a quiver in his voice. "You are trespassing on private property. You have no warrant, no mandate, no legal authority." He took another step. Not a single muscle twitched on his face. And I have 3 recordings of your actions over the past 48 hours, wearing false badges, issuing threats, attempting extortion." The man silently reached for his hip, not for a weapon, for his radio. His hand trembled. And that's when Grandpa assumed the stance. Not athletic, not aggressive. Sniper stance, 1 foot back, arms loose but ready, head slightly tilted, eyes locked in. This wasn't just a pose. This was muscle memory, pulled from some desert op or midnight drill buried deep in his bones. Everyone froze. Even those who didn't know a thing about military posture felt it. Something in the air shifted. It got heavy, thick. He didn't raise his voice, but every word landed like a scalpel on glass. "You'd better leave before I call the real feds." The neighborhood woke up the next morning to the sound of sirens. Parked in Grandpa's driveway were local PD cruisers, an SUV bearing the seal of the federal prosecutor's office, and a silent black sedan, the kind veterans immediately recognize as those guys from the office where no one asks dumb questions. Yellow police tape was strung around the house, drawing neighbors like flies to honey, clutching coffee cups and phones. Grandpa stood on the porch, same denim shirt, same cup of coffee. But this time, he wasn't just watching. He was speaking with an agent, calmly, deliberately, like a man who had everything documented, measured, and filed by folder. It later came out that Grandpa had sent his recordings to 3 different agencies. He didn't wait to see how it played out. He didn't stall. He moved like a soldier, because he was one. The footage didn't just show the illegal booting of his truck. It captured licensing violations, direct threats, unauthorized entry onto private property, and most damning of all, a conversation offering a discount for silence, caught on the hidden micro camera in the mailbox. Everything was there, clean, precise, no emotion, just evidence. Turns out the HOA officers were nothing more than a private security company registered to a shell address, with a license that had expired 2 years prior. Their gear? Uncertified. Their authority? Entirely self-declared. And behind it all, Brett Westbrook. He had used his self-appointed HOA chairman position to fine residents for made-up violations, and then, for a price, quietly erase the charges. Journalists would later call it a system of domestic racketeering. Locals just said it plain, he was milking everyone. Until now. They arrested him at home, in his bathrobe, cigar in mouth, mid-delete on his tablet. The charges: fraud, extortion, unauthorized use of administrative power, obstruction of justice. Plus a couple of others that sounded particularly serious. And Grandpa's truck? Still there, same spot, dusty, massive, boot-free, with a new little sticker on the window. Released by county order. A week later, an emergency HOA meeting was held. The first in 10 years where no one yelled, no one threatened, no one waved the bylaws around like a weapon. Grandpa didn't run for anything. But they elected him unanimously, even those who hadn't dared to speak up in years. And since then, the neighborhood has had a new sign at the entrance. Metal. No frills, no logos, just words. White letters on a black background. Protected by a sniper. Welcome home.